Jocko, how do the SEALs reconcile themselves with the fact they face death on every operation they undertake, more so than the conventional forces? Is this something that is learned?
Well, first of all, let me make it perfectly clear that this is not true.
What is it?
Well, first of all, the part that you face death on every operation, there's always a chance. But furthermore, and more importantly, this idea that the SEALs or Special Operations Unit face death more so than conventional forces, not true. In fact, in many cases, SEALs are safer than the conventional forces. The conventional forces are out there doing very difficult operations that are oftentimes more dangerous. I mean, even just something as simple as going on a logistics convoy. In Iraq and Afghanistan, you're extremely exposed in those situations. You're on the defensive because you're in a convoy. You're just waiting to get blown up. And so that situation is you're much more exposed in that situation doing a daytime convoy run down IED'd roads than you would be if you were doing a night patrol through the same area. That's just the way it is. I mean, there's other operations too. I mean, presence patrols and census operations. There's all kinds of operations that the conventional units do that are extremely dangerous. They also oftentimes have less support. So, for instance, there's an aircraft called an AC-130 that is just a miraculous piece of equipment, just an incredible weapon system. And it's an airplane that flies around at 10,000 feet, and it can see everything because it has these incredible imagery systems on it. So they can see everything that's happening. They can track. And then they can shoot and destroy anything they want. So a lot of times the Special Operations Unit will have, for instance, something like an AC-130 supporting them. You know, on top of that, Special Operations, they get really good training. So you've got this outstanding. Now, the conventional forces often have great training as well, but sometimes they don't have the best training in the world. Then you're in a SEAL platoon or you're in a Special Operations, in a Special Forces ODA. You're going to have some good training under your belt that you've been going through for many, many years. So that training makes you safer as well. And you're going to get, oftentimes, again, you're going to get better gear in Special Operations because they have a big budget for a smaller number of people. The logistical support, the flexibility that you have in Special Operations is usually better. And I mean, like the logistics in the Army or the Marine Corps is awesome. Mm-hmm. And it definitely is better than Special Operations, but Special Operations is always supporting a much smaller unit. So even though the logistics people or systems might not be as good, they're overwhelmingly good for the small number of people that are in Special Operations. So, I'll just go one step further. A lot of times, in Ramadi, the conventional guys, they were living out in the city. They were living out in the city of Ramadi after we put combat outposts in place. We, SEALs, would return to base after a few days out in the field. These guys stayed out there. So we'd return back and, get a shower and get some good food and relax. We had permanent guards that kind of guarded our base with a really big perimeter. So we were in a good spot to stand down for the most part. Whereas the conventional guys, they're out there in Ramadi. They're standing watch, we go back and can take a break and go on the internet. When they take a break, they're going into a watchtower. So I just want to make sure I make it perfectly clear that, the conventionals are by no means doing anything less risky than the Special Operations. In fact, most of the time they're doing things that are more risky, tougher missions, higher risk, that's just the way it is. So that's why, we have just the utmost respect and admiration for the conventional units that we work with in Ramadi. And I'll tell you, the guys, that's how we feel. So now the question becomes, how do any service member, face death is the question. And again, it's any service member. Anybody that's going to war has to realize that there's a possibility that they could get killed. Mm-hmm. And so how do you get over that? For me, it was acceptance. And saying to myself, you know what? Okay, I could get killed. And it could happen tonight. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in a week. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it could happen. And you know what? I'm not afraid of it. Mm-hmm. So if I'm afraid of it, that's going to be hard to deal with every single day. The other piece of it is you deal with it by mitigating as much risk as you possibly can. Okay, what can we do? How can I make sure that I'm safe? You know how I make sure that I can stay as safe as possible? I train hard. I make sure my guys are training hard. I make sure my guys are dialed in. I make sure that they know what the plan is when we go out on the battlefield. That's what you do. Mm-hmm. You mitigate as much risk as you can, and then there's areas where you can't mitigate risk. Yeah. There's areas where you could you could find an IED, you could find a bullet, you could find a bomb, and that's it. And you can't, in my mind, you can't worry about things that you can't control. So the things that you can't control, accept them, and let's focus on mitigating what we can control. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I did when I was in those situations. And I would tell you that that's what most of the guys that I was with had something along those lines in their brains.
Yeah. That acceptance is such a powerful thing. Like if you just accept something like, okay, I'm at risk of this, or I'm this is going to be a terrible, crude example, comparatively speaking.
Compared to what?
Compared to accepting the risk of death.
Let's hear it.
Let's say you messed up.
Is it a long example?
let's say you go to work.
The fans wanted me to say that.
Yeah.
All right, let's say you go to work.
Let's say you go to work, and right when you walk in, one of your coworkers say, "Hey, man, John, your boss is looking for you. He's gonna," and you know you did something, you messed it up, you blew off some meeting, I don't know, whatever. You messed up with a client. You're like, "Hey, man, the boss is looking for you," and you're like, so you're gonna avoid the boss at all costs.
Oh, that's gonna make for a long day.
Yeah. So let's say you avoid him one day. The whole day, boom, you clocked out, you're out. Next day, same thing. Oh, shoot, he's looking for you even more. After a while, it's going to weigh on you. Mm-hmm. And once you just feel like, I'm going to get chewed out, let me just accept it. And then, you can go through with it. Stress is gone.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Analogy accepted.
Yeah. Or for example, just kidding.
Thank God.
Well, if a bully is looking for you.
Yeah, go up and get him.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've ever been bullied in school, but if someone's looking for you, they're mad at you or whatever, and they're looking for you, the bully, and you're like, man, you're avoiding them. After a while, you just, all right, I accept it. Something's gonna have to go down. I'm gonna have to experience this confrontation.
And really, the acceptance point would be to say, you know what? What's the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing that could happen, he beats me up, I get a bloody nose, I don't care anymore.
Right.
I'm going to go get it.
Yeah.
Because what you're talking about really is facing the problem, which I also support. You know what? You got a problem, whether it's meeting with your boss or you're going to get bullied, I'm going to face that problem. Yeah. So that's one piece. But one thing that will help you to face the problem is saying, okay, what's the worst thing that happens? Yeah. You know what? I go into my boss, he might fire me. Okay, if he fires me, I'm going to have to go get a new job. But that's the worst thing that's going to happen.
Right.
What's the worst thing that happens if I get in a fight with a bully? Worst thing that happens, I'm going to get a bloody nose. I'm going to get beat up.
Yeah.
But you know what? I can handle that. So I'm going to go face this issue. And it's the same thing in combat. What's the worst thing that happens? Worst thing that happens, I'm going to get killed. Okay. That happens. Yep. It's over. I'm good with it. Let's go out and face it. And, honestly, I said it's the worst thing, but honestly, the thing that guys are usually most afraid of is having their friends get hurt or their guys get hurt. That's the worst thing.
Yeah,
so.
Fully. And then even how you said that the training helps, and that seems obvious, but I think even that that's kind of an understated, I think, underappreciated thing.
Yeah,
because, remember when USC came out, and I I remember looking and being like, bro, these guys are nuts to go in there to do that. But once you learn even just some jujitsu, what you see, like them fighting in the UFC and stuff, like that's.
I could do that.
Yeah, and actually that's one of the reasons why I started jiu-jitsu. I didn't start jiu-jitsu, I wanted to be a fighter. So I trained in MMA first. And before training that, I would have thought you're completely insane to do that. Like you got to be like kind of crazy person. But once you have the training, you see, oh, okay, it kind of just
you get
turns on the
inoculated
lights.
to it.
You see like, okay, I see all this stuff. And you have just a vast understanding rather than all you see is knuckles and blood and arms breaking and stuff. All right, next question.